This is Terms of Reference. I'm your host, Stephen Laddick. Jen Hale is the Senior Manager of Corporate Partnerships and Philanthropy at Population Services International. She manages a new philanthropic initiative aimed at catalyzing the next wave of social investors interested in improving the health and rights of girls and women worldwide. Prior to joining PSI, Jen spent almost 10 years in philanthropy at National Public Radio. She has been committed to international development since college, working in youth camps in Ukraine, volunteering with the IRC to resettle Sudanese refugees, and serving as a Peace Corps volunteer in Armenia. Jen has an MBA in International Business and Nonprofit Management from George Washington University. I spoke with Jen in Washington, D.C. Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for being on the Terms of Reference podcast today with me.
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you. Jen, tell me what it is that you are doing right now for PSI. Tell us, what's your job title and what are you doing on a day-to-day basis?
So I manage Philanthropy at PSI, which is a leading global health organization with programs targeting health issues such as malaria, child survival, HIV, reproductive health in about 70 countries. So what we do is make people in the developing world make sure they have access to affordable health care so they can lead healthier lives and plan for their families. And I'm really excited about an initiative that I was hired to create, which is engaging social investors in launching their own pilot projects for girls and women.
So what does that mean? We talked a lot on Eatpreneur here about fundraising. And that's usually proposal development or seeking donations. What's unique about working with philanthropists in that way?
Well, it's really exciting, and it's changing in the whole development community because non-traditional funding is changing, and a lot of the big donor governments want matches from corporations or individuals. So we're working really on two new fronts. One is there's a new generation of social investors out there. They don't like to be called donors. They're about sharing their talents as well as their money with the organizations that they're involved in. And this is fundamentally changing philanthropy. Around here, we often refer to it as disruptive philanthropy. So it's about the individual's involvement and impact beyond check writing. So their intellectual capital and their skill set, their business knowledge is valued along with their financial capital. So we're finding that people want more than their name on a building and a ticket to a gala. They want measurable results, hands-on involvement, and social change that they can really be a part of in their lifetime. And why this is so exciting for the development community is it's a win-win to partner on projects with individual philanthropists, corporations, and donor governments.
Why is this new? Philanthropy's been around forever. Why is this particular, you call it social philanthropy, why is this new? What makes this moment in history unique?
It makes it unique because people are giving away money differently. They want to give it away in their lifetime. It's not just about leaving a legacy when they die. Even the younger generation, the next gen philanthropists, the millennials, they want to have it as a full part of their lives now. And so they want to see change. They want to make huge investments at a younger age. And a lot of philanthropists have made their own money. The majority of them are entrepreneurs, and they look at their social investments much like their business investments. They want to see returns. They want to see measurable impact, and they're giving big and bold. And they're giving a lot of money to start new projects. And part of it is they can invest in projects that are catalytic and innovative, kind of like seed investors. So, for example, we have philanthropists at PSI investing in projects that big donor governments aren't funding yet.
Like what's an example of a project that you can talk about right now about something that PSI is doing that they wouldn't have done before because a social philanthropist came in and said, I think this is where I want my money to go?
Well, as you know, Stephen, gender-based violence is a huge issue. And girls' and women's issues have been often overlooked for many years, and it affects everything about a family's life, a woman's health, the health of her children. but it hasn't been on the radar in the global health community in the same way. And we had an investor come in and give $5 million to invest in 2 countries to launch gender-based violence in India and Trinidad. And then this is very exciting for the donor community. We launched in India, and USAID was very excited about it and talked about how great this is, and they might like to invest. So we're working in a proposal for that. So it's raising awareness and proving that we can prove this concept, and other donor money will flow.
One of the things you also mentioned that I found especially interesting was that these social philanthropists want to see return on their investment. This has been, as you know, in the development community, how do you measure that social return? It's either double, triple bottom line, or has PSI figured out a metric? Or is this something that you have to create every time, or is it unique to the individual? How are you measuring return for them?
Well, one of the things I love about PSI, and it was so attractive to me, I have a business degree and an MBA, is I love working in that kind of measurement and results-driven environment. And then PSI is an NGO that's what they've focused on for 42 years. They don't do anything that they can't measure. So we were very, very well poised to take on this for philanthropists. So yes, everything we do is measured, and those results are taken and used as a case study.
Give me an example of how you do that. Are there specific tools that PSI uses that you can talk about that might give insight to other people listening to this, particular databases or particular methodologies that are unique?
Well, I'm not an expert in any way on measurement, but we use something called the DALY, the Disability Adjusted Life Year, and it measures years of healthy life added. And so PSI has been using that model, and others in the development community use it as well.
When we're talking about people of high net worth and the way that you have described the need of these individuals to see an impact in their lifetime, I'm also thinking there could be some egos involved. There could be some people who are potentially difficult to manage. Has that been your experience? Has that been, are they sort of really accommodating to PSI, or do they come in and bring their personality with them and say, I'm giving you the money and I'm going to have a real thumbprint on this?
Well, first of all, I think a lot of people are afraid of philanthropists and people with a lot of money. And they're really just people who want to use their wealth to change the world. And they seek education and partnership just as much as we do with them. So first, I want to dispel the rumor that they're difficult to work with, or they will come into your NGO and tell you what to do. And I haven't found that to be the case at all. Most of them are very humble. They want to learn, but it is a different relationship because philanthropists want to give their input and share ideas. And I think it's a balancing act. But I think it's the way of the future.
Have you noticed that when you interact with other portions of PSI who are seeking more traditional funding from USAID and other donors, has that conversation been changing with traditional donors and traditional models of fundraising as well? Are you involved in those conversations on a day-to-day basis?
I'm not, but our team is. And so PSI has a new business development department. And what they do is write grants for large foundations like USAID, DFID, the Global Fund. And then we have a corporate team who works in partnering with ExxonMobil or Unilever. But this is all, the walls are breaking down. And so more and more it's a conversation with my team on philanthropy, corporations, for example, on nutrition. How can we partner together? And more it is, the walls are breaking and it's more fluid. So we might all work on one project together that would be government funding, a funding from a corporation, and funding from a philanthropist. And what the philanthropist can do is open the floodgates. So they kind of unlock the funding by giving a seed grant. So it's very exciting for the global international development community, but also for a philanthropist to see how they can really make an impact. And one example I wanted to share is we did this with male circumcision. So from a gala, we raised $400,000 to invest in behavior change communications for men to be circumcised because it prevents, reduces HIV. Everyone thought it couldn't happen, and that investment has since leveraged almost $300 million. And so it's about investing small amounts and really proving impact, and then other funding comes.
Take me through that. So you invested in the gala. Is that the investment you're talking about?
Yes, we received about $400,000. We used that as a seed investment to do a pilot project on male circumcision, and it was hugely successful. And it brought in, hundreds of millions of donor money.
That's amazing. You take me to a point that I'm sure everybody's interested in. I'm thinking that, again, individuals or foundations of high net worth, they don't actually, usually publish their cell phone number. How do you attract them? How do you, do you have a secret sauce for, being able to call up, philanthropists A and B? Is it hosting events, or do you, because you're such a large organization, you have an in, or what's your way of getting that Rolodex?
Well, there's no secret sauce, and it's a combination of things. And I've worked in this field for many years, and it takes a little bit of, the organization has to be very strong, charismatic, and very, very wonderful leadership, a great reputation. At PSI, my boss is kind of a superstar. She was a young global leader with the World Economic Forum, Kate Roberts. So she does have a really great Rolodex. And having co-chairs and board members open doors is very important. We do a series of thought leader dinners around the world where we have 12 men and women around the room discussing a problem around girls and women. Wealth advisors, sometimes that's a great in. They advise their clients on projects. So it's an art and a science, and it's a lot of work.
I'm glad that you've taken us to this point in the conversation. You say you've been doing this for a long time. How did you find yourself in this position at PSI? Where did you come from? And was development work and humanitarian aid work, is that, did you graduate from college knowing this is where you wanted to go, or how have you found your way here?
I started in college and spent a summer in Ukraine. That changed my life completely. And since then, I was very drawn to working with people in the developing world, especially girls and women. I joined the Peace Corps at 25 to 27. And, it's hilarious because I arrived in the Peace Corps. And there's this youngish girl, and pretty cute, and she was such a badass. And I thought, that is going to be me in 2 years. And it wasn't. She was just so tough and amazing. And it made me clear, this isn't something, I'm not really great at learning languages. I practically froze to death. I wasn't the toughest person that I imagined when I left the Peace Corps. But it was amazing because I can make an impact if it's not on the ground. And something I'm really good at is connecting people. I love meeting new people. I love talking about a cause. I love inspiring people to get involved with things. And so my role as a connector is different than what I thought I would be doing. I thought I would be doing more programmatic work when I was, first joined the Peace Corps. And so you just kind of go through life and find your passion, but learn what you're good at to change the world.
I think there is a meme within the development and aid community that the field is where it's at. Those are the people who should be prioritized, and that's the only thing. And yet you've just made an eloquent case for everyone else who supports those operations.
No, people who have data gathering experience are so important. And just all of this can't happen, and it's very rewarding to find funding for projects. I absolutely love going to the field with our partners and seeing the work that they're doing because their life changes as well as the people that you're putting money on the ground. So it's very beautiful. So I encourage people to just really be open about your career because you can do so many things in the development world that contribute and to be true to yourself.
You have painted a fairly rosy picture up to this point, the art and the science of fundraising, of speaking with these, creating this new initiative of social philanthropists at PSI. Tell me about a time over the last year, maybe in this new position or before, where you just stumbled, or you guys put together a project and it failed. What was that like? How did you pull yourself up, or what did you use as a lever to get yourself up and keep going?
Well, first of all, it's been a really, really challenging year and a half. So I was hired at PSI, and they had never really had a concerted effort in working in philanthropy. So I feel like what I've been doing is a startup. The crazy hours, the lack of sleep, and it's all been worthwhile and so rewarding. But there are days when it's completely off balance, and I think the biggest challenge is, I'm emotionally invested in what I do and with our partners. When we feel like we haven't communicated enough. And so I think our biggest failures, and my biggest failures personally, is making assumptions. So working with people, you can't assume that I say over communicate, and transparency is critical. So some of the stumbling blocks that we've had is when we don't make our partners happy with what we're doing because we weren't really clearly listening enough to them and digging deep on what they wanted out of the partnership. So I would think that that's the most difficult. And from a more just superficial level, there's really hard days in the field when, transportation doesn't work in India, or you're stuck on the side of the road and everyone's sick. So there's mostly good days, but there's a few challenges.
And so it sounds like while we're talking to you in D.C. right now, there's a fair amount of field work for you anyway. And is that tours for the philanthropists? Is that going and finding projects that you then come back and present to philanthropists? How does that work, and what's that sort of a percentage of your work?
I love being in the field, and I think that that's the most rewarding part of this job for me. Is actually, you can't really be a great inspiration. You can't inspire people if you don't know what it is. And I have to experience it myself. And so most of my trips to the field, we call them learning journeys. So we take a group of, sometimes it's a mix of corporations and philanthropists to the field to see the work and the girls and women that they can impact. So I've been to Myanmar on a learning journey, most recently India. I think next step is South Africa.
And how much of that is your time? Is that, are you on the road half the time?
No, I don't think I would be married still if that was the case. Jeremy likes me home and I like to travel. So I'd probably say a third.
How is this job that you're doing now different than what you used to do at National Public Radio? You were a fundraiser there for many years. What are the differences and what's the similarities?
I mean, I think relationship building and is the same everywhere. The biggest difference, and I loved journalism. It's so exciting, and a lot of what I did there was engaging with our international journalism and asking people to support that effort. But at NPR, they have a firewall. Because journalism is so strict, they don't want funders influencing the programming. It was difficult to build partnership and engagement. And so it's easier at PSI first because really we're saving lives and people are eager to invest in that. And also it's a very high engagement. So we work with our partners and help them become thought leaders on the issue. It's very, very close. They almost become part of the team. And for PSI, because there are quite a few philanthropists interested in this, we can be very selective. So we choose men and women who want to really learn, engage, and become vocal advocates for global health. And
is there a average percentage of time that you would see one of these philanthropists, spending on a project or in their initiative? My assumption would be that this is a small percentage of the portfolio of work that they do every day, or do they sort of dive in with their feet and they're sort of there every day?
Everybody's different, but we're working with different types of philanthropists, and a lot are newly retired. And they've run businesses and they sold companies and they were corporate lawyers. And they have a lot of time and they want to learn. So there is some philanthropists and social investors, some really don't even like to be called philanthropists, that we spend a lot of time with. And they speak on panels on behalf of the projects they support. They write op-eds. And then some, and we also work with very young philanthropists. Some are 24 years old and have inherited wealth and really want to make a difference. And I think the range is everything. Some people want to be very involved, and some people have less time.
We've heard from some people who work in much, much smaller organizations than PSI who have had a rainmaker or who have, or an organization that's been founded by, someone who's has a high net wealth. How do you think your job would be different, or how you'd approach it would be different if, you worked at a true small startup NGO or a small advocacy organization?
I don't think it would be terribly different. I think it would be, because PSI is a huge organization. We have 9,000 employees in 70 countries. But to be honest with you, it doesn't have a high name recognition. A lot of people haven't heard of PSI. So just as if I was a small, less well-known organization, I do spend a lot of time talking about what PSI is and what we do.
And so would that be your normal entry point is, here's who we are, here's how we engage the world, we're looking for you to help us, grow that impact, basically?
I mean, sure, but I have to say, especially in working with people, it's not always just about PSI, and I would caution people to it's not a sales pitch. It's more, what do you want to do? So I would ask a philanthropist or social investor, how can I help you create the impact in the world that you want to create? That's what it is. It's about spending time and learning about them and helping them on their journey. So I really caution, the whole perfect pitch and perfect presentation is not how it's done, in my experience.
Have you experienced in the last year and a half a time where you or PSI has said, I don't think there's a good match here, and maybe you've handed off to another NGO or something like that?
Absolutely. And that's something we have done several times just in the last 6 months, is meeting with people, talking with them, and they might want to invest first in something that is not a strategic priority for PSI. So we absolutely turn down potential investors, or they're not the right fit for many reasons. They don't have the right priorities. They're not in it for the right reasons. So it's important long term, because also with your investors, you are creating a community with PSI, and a community of people who are your investors, and they're part of the team. So finding the right fit, I think if you look at philanthropy less as I'm asking for money and looking at it as a true partnership, it becomes so much easier and so rewarding. I know that sounds cheesy, but it takes the pressure off, and it's a more natural relationship.
If I can, I'm not sure if you're able to answer this, but what's sort of a minimum buy that you ask from people? Is it in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, or does it have to be in the millions of dollars?
Well, people can give to PSI unrestricted for any amount, $50,000, $2, $100,000. But to start with the social investments I'm talking about, it's a minimum of $1 million over 3 years, because it's starting a brand new project from scratch. For example, we have someone starting an entire social franchise in Honduras, which is amazing.
What's you've started this new department here at PSI. It's an exciting venture. You said it feels like a startup to you. What's the next 5 years look like for you? Where, if we were talking to you in 2020, what do you have hoped to have accomplished, and what do you hope that your career is looking like?
I mean, for PSI, it's launching many projects around the world for girls and women, but also I love being part of something new and kind of changing the way philanthropy works. So I really love working very closely with our partners and engaging them in more of a partnership model, and I think more NGOs will kind of go that direction. So for PSI, it's not only launching projects for girls and women, but creating a community of philanthropists to learn from each other. So we're looking to try to engage young people, 20, and there, believe me, it's shocking, but there's a lot out there, a lot of wealth transfer. I mean, we're looking at this, the small number is $41 trillion in the next 40 years of intergenerational wealth. And so, you know, for better or worse, there's a huge amount of wealth coming down the pipeline, and people, especially young people, want to make an impact. So what we're looking to do, and what I personally love being part of, is creating a community of philanthropists that really take action and that learn from each other and are open to risk. And that's another new part of philanthropy that's really exciting, is because we're finding people who have built businesses, they're more comfortable with risk. So for so long, NGOs have been just telling their funders, oh, everything's great. Here's what we've been doing, you know, the nice little report. And what we're trying to do, and I hope is becoming more common, is open to risk, open to failure, and really being honest with that, with them and your funders.
As you've gone on these trips, you said Myanmar, you said India, other places around the world, either with high net worth individuals or, you know, when you're seeking out new projects. If you and I were sitting in DC together having a coffee, and you know, and you wanted to tell just that one story that always pops up, or you know, at a brunch, or whatever, what's that one story that you like to tell?
You know, it's so wonderful, but it's not cheesy, but you do have these aha moments in the field when you go to a country. And something that was really meaningful to me, that you can read about in an article, but you don't understand it till you've kind of lived it and felt it emotionally. So I was in Myanmar with, it was the last day of a long trip with funders. We'd been stuck in traffic and we were all exhausted, and you just wake up and you think another day. And part of it is it's emotionally exhausting to see the kind of suffering that you're seeing on these trips. And we went to this center, it's called a TOP center that PSI has created in that country, that works with the most marginalized populations in Myanmar. And as you know, it was a closed society. So sex workers who were many times forced into this work because of almost starvation, and then transgender population and gays and lesbians. And so it was amazing. We came, and like 10 of us, CEOs and corporate lawyers and philanthropists, and they gave testimonials about how this center and PSI gave them their dignity and hope for living. And this dignity you kind of throw around, but to realize that they really thought they were nothing. They had no self-worth at all. And so providing health is giving people dignity and respecting them. And so we were at the center, and they gave these powerful testimonials, and we're all in complete tears. And then they came out and did a fashion show like you wouldn't believe. Like this beautiful, I mean, they had rehearsed for months. I mean, and we were thinking we're just stopping in, and they did this beautiful fashion show with dance routines, and after, your heart was just pulled from you, and we're all bawling, and then we're laughing and celebrating. And so that was one of my best experiences with PSI and in the field and in philanthropy in general, because you think, what can I do? The problems of the world are so overwhelming. And then you realize that you change lives, and there's this person who, you know, needs you out there. So it's like a big problems, it simplifies them to be in the field. So that was one of my favorite experiences.
Oh, thanks for sharing. That was fantastic. 2 more questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
First, you've been lucky enough to create success as a development professional in this. You've explained to us, you know, how you've chosen to follow this fundraising path. Is there any particular tool or technology or technique or system that you've relied upon, maybe how you run meetings or how you talk on the phone or et cetera, that you've found that you've carried through your career or you've learned that you think would be important for others to think about?
I mean, technology, there's many kind of databases you can use. One of the new ones is WealthX, which is pretty amazing, and it does the research function for you. But I've seen it's not so much technology-based. More to success in this is to be very fast and to respond and have ideas and have systems. There's some flexibility that is required, but how I've seen this done really well is to really be responsive to people, and it's a people business. So a lot of it is a database is key. I mean, you must have software. We use Salesforce to keep all your contacts and your records and any conversation you have, documenting that, because believe it or not, you do forget when you think you'll remember it for a lifetime. So it's pretty simple. It's just staying on top of things and being very responsive and being responsive quickly.
Last question, and this is a question we ask every interviewee here on Terms of Reference. What's your critical piece of advice for someone who is either looking to transition into the development and humanitarian aid world, or somebody maybe who's finishing a degree right now about getting that first job or how to create success in this career?
And it's funny because, Stephen, you know this. I live in Washington. Everybody wants to be in this field. And there's not enough jobs for it. And so I do informational interviews all the time. The best thing to do is, if you can, intern and network. And just the people you can always find a job is if you're relentless in that pursuit. Every job we post, we have hundreds, if not thousands of resumes. Absolutely work in the field. Joining the Peace Corps is amazing. Because it's so competitive, we really look for people who have lived in the field and spent time overseas. Learn a language is important. But also just being open and not being so concerned about the title, but just take a position in an organization you care about and that you really want to work for, and you'll move up. So I hope that's helpful.
Jen, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Stephen. It's so great to hear your voice, and I hope to talk again.
You've been listening to Terms of Reference, a weekly podcast from aidpreneur.com. Find us on iTunes or at www.aidpreneur.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.